Hey guys, what is going on? We are back on the Tier Maker website, and that can only mean one thing. We are ranking something here today, and it is, of course, all of the Season 1 Assault Rifles. We did receive a lovely new Assault Rifle in the Cooper Carbine, and that is going to be on this list here today as probably one of the better weapons on this list, but we'll have to wait and see. But just before we do get into it here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. As you can see here, about 85% of you guys watching these videos right now are not subscribed, so if you could take the time to hit that little red button for me, that would be absolutely massive. So let's talk some tier explanations here. At the bottom, we do have the dumpster here, and this is, you don't want to find yourself in here. If you are in this, you are one of the worst weapons in the game, in my opinion. Then above this, we do have the situational tier, and these are weapons that typically do only excel in certain situations. Obviously, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Then we do have the pretty good tier. This is in the middle. These are middle of the road weapons, stuff that is really just only okay, but you're still going to be able to get some kills with these. They're not the worst, but they're not the best. Then we do have almost meta, of course. This is getting up there. These are weapons that are very, very good in this game, but do have specific details that do make them a little worse than some of the top tier weapons. And then at the top, we do have the meta in the red tier. These are the best weapons in the game at the moment. These could probably deal with some kind of like nerfs, maybe some changes to bring them into line with some of the other weapons in this list. But at the moment, the meta is the top, and these are some of the best weapons that we can go with here. So starting us off here, we do have the AS-44. Now, this is a weapon that is actually quite interesting in this game. With the right attachments and all the right builds and stuff like that, you actually can get this thing to a very, very fast TTK. The only thing that does sort of struggle with this weapon is actually the recoil control. I've heard it's not super easy to control on console. Maybe not super tough on PC, given that mouse aim and stuff like that can be a little easier. But in general, this thing is actually quite fast killing when you do unlock those later attachments. I think it gets down to about 150, 160 milliseconds in terms of that TTK off the top of my head. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong with that. But again, this thing is a little bit difficult to control compared to some of the other weapons on this list when you do fully kick them out. So we are going to put this in the almost meta tier, mostly because this is still a very fast killing weapon in this game. It's just a little harder to control than some of the other weapons on this list. Next, we do have one of my absolute favorite weapons in the game at the moment, and that is the Automaton. With the right attachments, the right build with this thing, the damage barrel, and the damage increasing magazine, you actually can take this thing to 154 milliseconds worth of time to kill, which is lightning fast for this game. Sort of the benchmark that we do want to hit for a decent weapon in this game, a really powerful one, is about 170 to 180 milliseconds, and that pushes past that and still is ridiculously easy to control. You get great attachment choices with this thing. So we're going to put this in the top tier, the meta tier for the Automaton. Because of the ridiculously fast time to kill and ridiculously easy to control recoil, this thing is a monster. If you've not tried it out yet, make sure you give it a go because this thing dominates at close range, medium range, and long range as well. Next, we do have the BAR here, or the BAR, which is, I believe, the Browning Assault Rifle, I think? Maybe? That's probably not right, but if it is, just let me know. Basically, the BAR or the BAR, basically this thing is a relatively slow-firing, high-damaging assault rifle in this game. I believe you can get a 3. The details in this thing are a little fuzzy to me because I don't use this particularly often. But when I was sort of leveling this thing up, I find that slow fire rate does make it a little bit more difficult to hit a follow-up shot. So this is more of a skill shot sort of testing weapon. Basically, when you are getting those shots on target, if you are good with slow firing weapons, you will dominate with this thing because it does have a relatively fast TTK in this game. And I think it does, again, push that 170, 180 millisecond time to kill value. But again, if those numbers are wrong off the top of my head, make sure you do correct me because the BAR or the BAR, depending on how you do want to prefer it, it's actually quite good in this game. I think it's probably pushing. I think it's almost up there. Like almost meta is probably the right place for this thing. Again, that slow fire rate does really hold this thing back though. And it is not everyone's cup of tea with that slow fire rate. Like you can miss some shots. It's harder to hit up like a follow-up shot to get that kill. It can be a little bit more difficult because of that slow fire rate, but because it does deal high damage, we go in the almost meta tier. Next, we do have, as I said, the brand new weapon on this list, and that is the Cooper Carbine. Now, this thing I believe is modeled after the Thompson or the M1944 Hyde variant, which is of course the carbine rifle. This thing is an absolute monster in this game. Essentially, you can get this thing down to 140 milliseconds worth of time to kill. I believe that is of course without a magazine attachment, but you can get vital perk with this thing, which means you're getting 37 damage-ish per shot. If you get 2 upper torso shots and then a follow-up body shot, you're getting 140 milliseconds worth of time to kill with this thing, which is outrageously fast, man. Plus, you can make this thing an absolute laser beam. I would have maybe considered adding like a broken tier on this thing, but I do think it actually does compete very, very well with the Automaton in this game. At the moment, the Cooper Carbine, one of the best guns in the game, let alone best assault rifles. This is one of the best guns in Vanguard right now, so of course we put this in the meta tier. Next, we do have a weapon that I have not had a lot of time for in this year's game, unfortunately, just yet. We've not got really around to testing it, but this is the Itra Burst. Now, I know where I'm going to put this thing already, but I've not really put too much effort into leveling this thing up just yet, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If I say the wrong thing about this weapon, it's because I've not used it an awful lot. But I believe the Itra Burst is one of those weapons that is fine. Because it is a burst weapon, people don't typically gravitate towards them anyway, mostly because they are a little bit trickier to use than sort of your standard assault rifle class setups for the most part, because they're not fully automatic. It's harder to hit those follow-up shots and so on. And the only reason people typically do use these burst weapons quite often was when they are absolutely broken. And now, because you typically don't see me or other YouTubers floating around being like, the Itra Burst is literally the most broken weapon in the game, that basically means that it's fine. Like, it's not offensive here, but it's not absolutely broken either. So again, a middle of the road for the Itra or the Itra Burst weapon. I feel like this is a good place for it. Next, we do have a very interesting weapon in this game, and that is the NZ41. Now, the weapon that I do actually compare this to most, it's a little different to the AN94, but it does still share sort of similar-ish properties, in which these sort of first couple of shots that you do fire are insanely accurate here, whereas the AN94's sort of couple of shots, they do fire out very quickly, so that's sort of that comparison there. Basically, with this thing, those first, I believe, about 5 shots are incredibly accurate here, so if you are getting a kill within those first 5 shots, which at the TTK values and the damage numbers that you can get with this thing, you can actually get a 2-shot kill. So if you do get a headshot and then a body shot follow-up with this thing, 2-shot kill, which is actually lightning fast in terms of TTK. So having those first 5-6 shots be insanely accurate makes this thing very, very easy for you to get those initial kills. After that, the weapon spray does sort of spray side to side, which is a little unfortunate, but with the right attachments, you can sort of negate that a little bit. But I really do like the NZ41, and I think the comparison to the AN94 is a little interesting here. Not exactly the same, but it is fairly similar. Alright, are you ready to get controversial? This is the STG44. Now, what do you guys think about this thing? I think it's kinda overrated. I'm not even gonna lie for a second. The TTK value on this thing without any of like a 2-shot kill, bug, broken, sort of vital, like magazine attachment thing, this thing kills at like 210 milliseconds, 220 milliseconds, which is like slow for this game. Like, it's still fast compared to sort of like other games that we've seen previously. But for this game, like when you compare it to the Automaton and the Cooper Carbine, this thing's like kind of bad. Like, honestly, it's like ridiculously easy to control. There's no recoil with this thing. But in terms of that pure TTK value, that ability to just kill people as quickly as possible, this thing's like kind of bad. So we put this in the dumpster? No, that's a bit much, isn't it? But again, this thing is ridiculously easy to control. A lot of people's favorite weapon here. I mean, it's just so easy. You can just hit people from basically across the map with like no effort at all. But again, that TTK value is actually kind of slow in comparison to some of the other weapons that we have already featured, like your Automatons and your Cooper Carbine. So I'm actually going to put this a little lower than I initially thought. I was going to put this in the almost meta tier and then the meta tier at the top. But I think I'm going to put this in the pretty good tier. Because like I said, this thing shoots kind of slowly. It's like 500 rounds per minute or 550 in terms of that fire rate at like a 3-shot kill. It's just kind of slow. So again, putting it in the pretty good tier, probably the top of the pretty good tier rather than the Itra Burst or the Itra Burst being at the top. It's pushing almost meta just because of how easy it actually is to use, but we're adding a little bit of controversy to this list. If you do disagree with this, make sure you leave a like on the video, man, just so I can see how you guys feel about the STG44. And then we do round this list off with the Volks Sturmengewehre, or the Volks, as we're just going to refer to it, just to make it a little bit easier on the old vocal cords, because I mean, that's just such a mouthful. Now, this thing actually is capable of getting a 2-shot kill. Now, it is a little bit of bait with the 2-shot kill, just because sort of you can get that extra burn damage from this thing if your minimum damage number is 39, but that sort of rises to about 41-ish, depending on whether you're getting those chest kills, how far away you are, and so on. So when you do get that little bit of extra damage, and then you chuck the incendiary damage, which is 9 burn damage over, I think, 3 seconds or so, when you add that on top, you're getting a 2-shot kill. Now, that's not always going to play out in the same way, and the TTK value without that 2-shot kill, if you're getting a 3-shot kill instead, is still about 170, 180 milliseconds, which is still quite fast for this game. Say, for example, you get a shot on an enemy, and then they duck behind cover, and then they like re-peek out after that burn damage goes out. You hit them again with another bullet, that burn damage goes out. All you need to do is just get that one shot on target, and in theory, they should die sometimes. So you are picking up kills you probably wouldn't have got otherwise if you weren't running the incendiary armor. So this is definitely something to consider. Again, Call of Duty gunfights don't necessarily happen in a vacuum most of the time, where both people are just standing still exactly in the one spot, shooting at each other at the same time. Like, there's little differences and there's inconsistencies in gunfights, so this is one of those things that does actually help you out sometimes. So a little bit of a rant about the Volk here, but I'm going to put this in the almost meta tier. Again, just because it is really easy to use, it's a very nice weapon. It does have that little bonus feature of being able to kill people you wouldn't necessarily be able to kill with that extra burn damage. But again, 174 milliseconds to 180 milliseconds worth of TTK if you do get a 3-shot kill still makes this thing very, very good. So as you can see here on this list, we do have two absolute standouts being, of course, the Automaton and the Cooper Carbine. And then the rest of the weapons on this list are actually really well balanced. A little bit sad about the Itra Burst because this thing could weave way better, but I still think with the right attachment class setup, this thing is actually still very, very good in this game. And it could probably rise on this list, but because it is a burst weapon, I think sort of the tip top that it could push in its current state is like almost meta. So again, thank you very much for watching this one. If you did agree with this list, or even if you disagree, make sure you do let me know, or show some love on the channel by making sure you hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I do massively appreciate it, and it really does help me out. And as I said at the start of the video, about 85% of you guys watching these right now are not subscribed, so if you could take the time, that'd massively help me out. So again, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye!